Do I want to grow a mini basketball sized cabbage because I'm replicating nature, or do I want to grow a... What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope all y'all are having a fantastic day. It is Friday, November 17th here in South Georgia. And on today's video, I want to talk about something that's been bothering me a little bit lately with respect to some of these gardening trends and fads that claim to drastically reduce or even eliminate the need for fertilizing your garden. So it doesn't take long scrolling through social media or browsing around on YouTube to find somebody who's promoting a certain gardening technique that'll tell you that this technique is just the best thing since sliced bread, and once you go to it, you don't even have to fertilize your plants anymore. So the two that immediately come to mind would be the back to Eden stuff and the no dig or no till stuff. And yes, we do have a few no till plots here. And not all of the proponents of those techniques will go to the extreme of saying you don't need any fertilizer, but a lot of them do. So their claim is that it's all about the soil biology. Once you get the soil biology right, get the soil ecosystem in place, get everything working together, that you don't need to add any additional fertilizer. And there's a little bit of truth to that, but it bothers me because that can be really confusing to beginner gardeners, thinking that, oh, if I do this, if I add this much compost or this much mulch, that I'm not going to have to feed my plants at all. And then we've got the whole electroculture thing, which thankfully seems to have kind of faded away into the night. But a lot of proponents of that were telling you that putting those copper coils in your dirt were going to drastically reduce the need to fertilize or eliminate it altogether. So when I see stuff like this, my mind gets to turning and I immediately start to think, what's the motivation behind this? Why are so many people seemingly averse to fertilizing the garden? Yes, it does add an additional cost to growing your own food, but it's not that much when you consider what you're getting in return. And I think a lot of it depends on what your reasoning is for growing your own food. Some people are growing food to save money. Yes, it saves us money here, but that's not my number one reason for having this big backyard garden. It's just fun to me to be out here. I like the convenience of it because we live about 10 or 15 minutes from town. I can just walk out here, grab something as opposed to going to the grocery store. And I also like knowing what's in the food I'm eating. So it seems like a lot of this fertilizer aversion stems from the sustainability, self-sufficient prepper crowd who are trying to figure out ways to do things while minimizing inputs, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. And then you have the kind of conspiracy theorist argument, which says these big ag companies are engineering things that require more fertilizer, so we have to keep buying their fertilizer to grow our own food. And they compare it to the pharmaceutical industry, which obviously creates drugs that are oftentimes generating dependency more than they are curing something. And I'm not trying to take a political side on any of these issues. That's not what we do on this channel. We're trying to look at things with an objective approach, kind of pull back the veil of hoopla and find out where the truth really lies. So one of the things that really gets my goat is when I read, see, or hear somebody talking about we need to try and replicate nature in our backyard garden. That's going to solve all our problems. And in my opinion, that is a very flawed argument. Because number one, we're growing plants that don't exist in nature. I've camped and hiked at just about every state park in the state of Georgia. Still got a few to check off the list. And I've never seen any cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower growing in any of the woods I've hiked in. And yes, there are some things that you can eat that grow out there in those woods. In the spring, there'll be some delicious blackberries growing along the edge of this wood line that we pick and enjoy in all kind of treats. But you're not going to find any cabbage, broccoli, or cauliflower growing in the woods because all this stuff has been selectively bred to be grown for food. And just to confirm my thoughts on this, every year for, I don't know, since we've been here, I'll dump some rotten produce in these woods here just to see if anything comes up the following year. And I've yet to get any groceries out of these woods besides those blackberries I was telling you about earlier. And the second problem with this whole replicating nature theory is that nature isn't perfect. things have gone extinct and things will continue to go extinct without any human interference. Yes, it is so nice to walk into an area of undisturbed woods and just soak in all the beauty and peace that it beholds. But that doesn't mean it's the greatest spot to be growing your own food. I like to use the example of this pecan tree here behind me, which on most years is going to give us a couple 5-gallon bucketfuls of yard nuts that we can shell, put in the freezer, and enjoy throughout the year. But in some years, like this year, we don't really get anything from it. Probably has a lot to do with the fact that it's been so dry around here lately. But I guarantee you those big pecan orchards down the road have had plenty of pecans to harvest because they've got their trees on drip irrigation and they're feeding those trees, giving them what they need. Same thing with this muscadine vine right here. We got a decent harvest this year, but we didn't get near the harvest that winery down the road got, which is giving their plants exactly what they need. So the whole replicating nature thing just doesn't hold up, in my opinion. At some point, you got to decide, am I trying to replicate nature or am I trying to grow groceries? Do I want to grow a mini basketball size cabbage because I'm replicating nature, or do I want to grow a full-size basketball cabbage because I gave those plants what they needed? Now, if you want to replicate nature and you're fine with some suboptimal harvest, nothing wrong with that. I'm not here to criticize you. Just don't tell me that that is the best way to grow your own food, especially if you're limited in space. So we spent some time explaining why some of these statements we see out there on social media are not absolutely true. Now let's try to find the truth, which often lies somewhere in the middle. So yes, we can create systems and use some of these techniques to grow some amazingly abundant plants, like these chocolate ghost peppers here in this no-till plot. Just amazes me every day how big these plants have gotten. Some of them on up there close to 5.5 foot tall. We picked them so many times and they're loaded down again. So these plants are definitely benefiting from this no-till, no-dig process that we implemented in this plot several years ago. And while most of the stuff we plant in these no-till plots does pretty well, we still have to supplement nutrients at some level. Maybe not quite as much as we do in some of the other plots, but we still have to feed those plants. And in addition to the no-till stuff, we also use this system right here, grazing cover crops with the chickens. And that's a lot of the reason why this cabbage and broccoli and cauliflower looks so good. Now, could we have grown cabbage in this plot without adding any additional fertilizer? I'm sure we could have. But as you might have seen a couple weeks ago, we still side dressed it with some blood meal to give it a little extra nitrogen, because personally, I like growing big cabbages. I don't like growing small cabbages. So I said all that to say this: be very leery about any gardening technique or method you hear about that claims to absolutely eliminate the need to add any fertilizer. And yes, having good soil biology, having a good soil ecosystem is going to help you out a ton, but it can take years for that to really develop and all start working together. And yes, using your animals for grazing on your garden plots can help you out a ton. So be careful what you buy into out there. Even if you are able to develop this perfect soil ecosystem, it's going to take you several years to get to that point, and you're going to need to be supplementing in those years before you get to that soil Pangea that you're going to create. So this worries me a lot when I see stuff like this, especially for new gardeners who buy into this stuff and then it's not as perfect as what someone said. So use your noggin. We're not necessarily trying to replicate nature out here. We're trying to grow cabbage, not acorns and pine cones. And please do let me know in the comments below your thoughts on the matter. If you think I'm way off base, that's perfectly fine. Feel free to let me have it in the comments below. And if you want to know more about this particular system behind me with the cover crops and the chicken tractor, be sure to watch this video right here. We'll break down our whole process and how we move the chicken tractor every day to get even grazing and feed our garden. So check that out, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.